Hello. We were on holiday in Crete a few years back. And one day we decided to go to a particularly beautiful bay with a fabulous beach. But rather than taking the coastal road, we decided to go over the mountains. All was well for much of the journey until we reached about half a mile away from our destination and realised that we were still 1,500 metres or more above our destination. Now, as we crested the ridge, we looked down on the ocean far below, and a terrifyingly steep and narrow road that zigzagged its way down the mountainside to our destination. It was scary enough for Ian as the driver, but it was even worse for us passengers because we had no control over what was happening. I think I held my breath the whole way down. Most of us prefer to be in control of the situations we find ourselves in day by day. And when we feel that control has been taken away from us, it can lead to anxiety, frustration, or even anger. We assume that having more control is better for us. And yet, as the pandemic has shown us, actually, we have much less influence over external circumstances than we would like to admit. Now, even though lockdown restrictions were lifted back in July, the pandemic continues to impinge on our lives to one extent or another. And many people, even 2 months on, still feel anxious, frustrated, or afraid. But what can we do about it? Well, let's turn to some well-known verses from Proverbs chapter 3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Now, it may seem strange to our modern way of thinking, but these verses tell us that the more control we release to God, the better it will be for us. Now, our Creator knows us so much better than we know ourselves, and he's far more equipped to lead and direct our lives than we are, no matter how much the world might tell us otherwise. Not only does he know us inside and out, but he can see our past, our present, and our future. And he knows the place he wants to lead us to, and it is infinitely better than anything we might imagine for ourselves. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Now, I'm sure that most of us would adhere to the principle that trust has to be earned, and that complete trust is only ever going to be given to a very few people in our lives, usually those that we know best and in whom we have complete confidence that they will have our interests at heart. The Bible teaches us that God and God alone is utterly and completely trustworthy in all things. He has never lost his love for his creation and his people, though we've turned our back on him time and time again. He's never stopped working towards restoring our relationship with him, though we keep pushing him away. He's never stopped wanting the best for each and every one of us, though in our pride, we've rejected his wisdom and followed our own path. He has never stopped demonstrating his perfect love for us and will never stop until time comes to an end. There is no greater demonstration of God's trustworthiness and love than Jesus, God's own Son, dying on the cross so that all the things that I've just mentioned could come about Jesus rising again from death so that we could enjoy God's love and faithfulness forever. Now, of course, we're never going to trust him unless we know him. And we're never going to be willing to hand over control to him unless we trust him. Our trust is achieved through a two-way conversation. He with us through his word and through his actions in the world, and we through prayer and by living out God's word, seeing it bear fruit in our lives and in those around us. And neither can trust be half-hearted. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. It's not a case of, I'll let God have a say over these areas of my life, but I know best in the others. Trusting God is a day in, day out walk with Jesus. And it won't always be the easiest path, but it will be the one that's best for us. Trusting the Lord must therefore go hand in hand with submitting to his will. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. How many movies and TV shows have you watched where at some point of crisis, one of the characters says to another, "Do you trust me?" And when the answer is yes, the day is saved. But first, one must submit to the other's will. And it's not easy. Our human nature wants to be in charge, to act like we know what we're doing. But so often, leaning on our own understanding puts us on the wrong path and takes us away from God's will. Of course, trusting God and submitting to him doesn't mean to say that when we give everything over to God, our lives will suddenly be all plain sailing. But it does mean that we can have confidence that ultimately every challenge we face, every trial we undergo is in God's hands and that he will never leave us. When we trust God and lean on him, we give him access to all of our life, not just a part of it. We allow him to have a say in the things we plan on doing to make sure that we don't end up on a dead-end road, but on a road that reflects his love in us and through us to others. Trusting God and submitting to him doesn't mean that all the straight paths that he leads us on will necessarily be the ones that we would have chosen for ourselves. But they will be the ones that draw us into a closer relationship with Jesus. And that's the great promise of these verses, that relinquishing control means gaining more of him.